This video explains different types that are available in JavaScript, and also how you can use different types of variables as well. First of all, let me tell you how you can print the statements in the console. So there is this function called as console.log, and then you can put whatever you want to print here in the console. You can also add some variables that you want to print, for example a, b, c, something like that. So that is possible through the console.log. So in Java we have got system.out.println. In C# we have system.writeLine. Similarly in the JavaScript we have got console.log, and you can use this in Node.js as well as browser as well. Next thing, JavaScript is a dynamically typed language and weakly typed language. So first of all, let me explain what is the meaning of dynamically typed language. So in C, C++, Java, C#, in all these languages we have to define or declare the variable with a type. So for example, if you want to store a value 10 in variable a, we know that it is an integer, so we do something like int a is equal to 10 in those languages. So here you can specify the type, so int is the type, okay. But in JavaScript, so this is called as a static type, and all languages like C, C++, C#, these major languages, these languages are statically typed. The reason being, we have to specify the type of the variable at the time of declaration. But JavaScript is not statically typed language. So you can see here I have defined or declared one variable a, but there is no type information I have given. So I have just specified let, which defines the scope for the variable, but typing is not there. So how JavaScript identifies the type of the variable is it infers the type of the variable. So looking at this assignment, it thinks, okay, this looks like a number, so it gives the type number. Okay, dynamically it decides. Same way here it comes, there is a string in the quotes, so it gives the type string to this variable b. So that is how it dynamically determines the type, and that is the reason we say JavaScript is a dynamically typed language. Now let us see why it is called as weakly typed language. Okay. So before I go to the weakly typed language, let me execute this and show you this type of a and b. So basically type of, this is a keyword that you can use to find the type of any variable in JavaScript. Unexpected end of input type of. So you can see here the type of a is number, type of b is a string, and even though we didn't declare that it is a string or a number, JavaScript identifies it dynamically based on the assignment, what value we are assigning. Okay, I hope it is clear now why it is dynamically typed language. Let's move on to the weakly typed language. Okay, so weakly typed language, why it is called as weakly typed language. Now again, there is weakly typed language and there is a strongly typed language. So for example, Python is a strongly typed language. While JavaScript is weakly typed language. Now let us see why it is called as weakly typed language. So here I have given examples there is one string and we are adding that string to the number, which doesn't make sense, but still we can do it, and JavaScript is happy to compile and execute this particular code. It will not throw any error. But if you do the same thing in Python will not allow this. It will say there are different types, you can't add a string with a number. So type conversion is happening here in JavaScript automatically. Okay, so 10 will be converted to string, and then they will be concatenating, as you can see in the output, 810, 1110, and then we specified, like explicitly converted it to the numbers, and that's why here it added it correctly. Then again here it is concatenating, because one of the operand for the plus operator is string, and that's why JavaScript thinks that we have to concatenate thing. And then finally we have got this multiplication operator. So here we are multiplying number with string. So JavaScript thinks how we can multiply string and number, so it tries to convert this string into a number, and that's successful. So it will give this result 110. So as you can see, type conversion is happening automatically in JavaScript, but in Python it will just throw the errors. Okay, let us move on now. Now if you talk about the types, there are two types, main broad categories in JavaScript: primitives and objects, or the reference. Okay, references or objects. The main difference between these primitives and these objects is that primitives are immutable and stored on stack. So when JavaScript executes the script or JavaScript code, it uses two memory structures. One is stack and one is heap. So all the primitives are stored on the stack, while all the objects, all the references are stored on heap. Okay, now in primitives, what types are included? There is a string, and there is a corresponding string object as well, as you can see. So I will explain later on why we have these objects along with these primitives. So then there is a number, and then there is a corresponding class as well for the number. Then there is a big int. Similarly, there is a class for big int as well. Then there is a symbol, boolean, undefined, null. So all these are primitives in JavaScript. So string is very obvious. We can store strings in that. Number, we can store numbers, floats in that. Big int is basically similar to the number, but in big int we can store the numbers that are larger than 2 raised to 53 minus 1. So that much big number we can store in that particular type of variable. Then symbol is basically used to create the unique properties for the objects. Then boolean, as we know, true and false, undefined and null. These are also primitives. So primitives are like copied by value, so that also you need to remember, copy by value, copied by value. So when it says it is immutable, it means it is copied by value. So if you pass any in any primitive type in a function call, what happens is that the copy of that particular variable is created. So if you pass a number a in the function call, a will be copied. Okay, a will not be mutated at all in the called function. There will be separate copies of a in the caller and whatever function is called. So there will be two different copies. Okay, and that's why it is called as immutable, because they are different copies. But in case of objects, when you pass object to the function, that is mutable. So if you make a change in the object's properties in the function that is getting called, this changes should be reflected in the caller. Okay, so these are important differences you need to remember. And if you are not clear about this thing, primitives, immutable primitives and objects, the difference between these, how they are being stored in the memory. This is very critical important topic to understand in any language. Okay, if you understand then it will be very easy for you to proceed or learn new language easily. Let us move on. So here we have created one object, so that is how you can create objects in JavaScript. This will create the empty object, and then there is a symbol. So symbol, as I said, it creates the unique properties, and you can see here I have created one unique property for the object, and this dot prop is actually a different property, nothing to do with the symbol that we are using here. Okay, so we have printed that object as well, prop2 and symbol 1. So symbol basically is a unique property for the object, and nobody else can override this property because this is a unique property, and that is the main reason why they introduced symbol, because earlier people used to override the properties in object. With symbol it is not possible because they are unique. Okay, and talking about the references or objects, we will be taking a separate video lecture on these objects, because everything is object in JavaScript, so it is very important that you understand the objects in and out, and everything including this function, array, map, set, date, all these are objects. So even function is an object. Okay, so that you need to remember, function is also an object in JavaScript. If you are coming from C, C++, Java, this language background, then it will be difficult for you to grasp like how function can be object, but that is possible in JavaScript, and that's why JavaScript is a little bit of weird language. But you need to remember this thing, everything is object in JavaScript. Okay, object, function, array, map, set, date, that is also object. And even primitives are objects, in the sense that when you try to access any just methods on the primitives, that primitive will be converted automatically into an object. So for example, before we end this lecture, let me explain you what I want to tell you. Okay, everything is an object, that is what I want to tell you. So that a is equal to 10. Now as we know, 10 is a primitive, and if I print it, it is just showing the number because it is primitive, it is not an object. Object normally has the prototype chain that we will be learning later on in the lectures, upcoming lectures, but right now there is no prototype that you can see for this particular object, because it is a primitive and it is not object basically. But if you do a dot, you can see all these methods are available. So how this is possible? If it is an object, if it is not an object, how it can access it can have access to these methods or functions? So that is possible because dynamically JavaScript behind the scene, what it does is that this even it is a primitive, it will be converted into an instance of a number. Okay, number is a kind of a class in JavaScript. Okay, it is a function, but it acts as a object. Okay, as I said earlier, function is also object in JavaScript. So basically what is happening here is a is a primitive, but when you press dot, what happens is dynamically it creates the instance of the number class, so it acts as an object temporarily, and then you can call these methods on that object. Okay, and that's why we say everything is object in JavaScript. Alright, so after this we are going to look at the scopes. So you can see on the left hand side, these are the lectures that are lined up in this series. Scopes, then there is objects, object creation, functions, object inheritance, ES6 class, arrays, strings. So these are all the lectures that are in the pipeline. After this lecture I am going to cover scopes. and then objects and so on and so forth. So stay tuned, you will get to learn a lot of things about JavaScript. I have got good experience doing coding in JavaScript, so hopefully you will find these videos very useful. Thank you for watching this video.